I pressed for clarity, desperate for answers amid the swirl of revelations that had upended everything I thought I knew. You were the child of my sister and your father, she said softly, eyes cast downward. My sister died just after giving birth to you. Your father was devastated. I promised him I would raise you. I became your mother. Her words struck with the quiet finality of truth. Suddenly, so many fragments from my past, feelings I could never quite explain, fell into place. She had set aside her own life, her dreams, to honor a promise made in grief. I remembered her younger self, how she once worked tirelessly in a bustling little diner, vibrant and full of purpose. She'd dreamed of owning a diner of her own one day, but when she chose to become my mother, she shelved that dream, trading ambition for obligation. Now, perhaps awakened by my father's message and the long-suppressed memory of her passion, she had decided to reclaim it. She was training part-time at a diner, determined to build something of her own from the ground up. I should have done this sooner, she admitted one evening, setting down her apron. Working, it's fun, it suits me. I never knew that before. There was regret in her voice, but not bitterness, just realization. So I guess it was my fault I never worked before, she added, her tone soft. I'm sorry, I didn't know how lost I was. It's not your fault, Mom, I said, quietly. I wasn't good with children, she confessed. I didn't know how to raise you well. I caused you a lot of pain. That night marked our first real conversation, not as reluctant caretaker and resentful daughter, but as two people finally acknowledging each other. We kept talking after that. Slowly, a new bond began to form. Eventually, we agreed to use part of my father's inheritance to help her open the diner she had once dreamed of. It was the least I could do, a way to honor not only my father's memory but her quiet sacrifice as well. Now that she was working, she'd become far more modest than I ever imagined. She refused to touch the inheritance for everyday expenses, insisting on paying her own way. If things get tight, you'll tell me, right? I asked her one day. Dad trusted me to look after you. I'll be okay, she replied. Living simply doesn't cost much. But, she hesitated, then added with a small smile, for the diner, I'll be relying on you. I'll be there every step of the way. Do your best, I said, heart swelling as I saw the glimmer of determination in her eyes. And somewhere along the way, we became a family, not defined by blood, but by choice. The day before her diner's grand opening, I stood beside her in the kitchen, watching her prepare. Your dream is finally coming true, I said. She paused, wiping her hands on her apron, then looked at me. Watching you work so hard at your job. I think it reminded me of my younger self, of what I used to want. You and your father, you both inspired me. Thank you, Mom, I whispered, emotion welling up in my throat. She looked at me then, with eyes full of sincerity. Promise me you'll always be my daughter, Amy. Let's get along even better than before, I said, smiling. We only have each other now. After my father died, the truth came out. It could have torn us apart, but instead, it drew us closer. And so, we decided we would move forward, together. Eventually, I began making plans to return to my hometown to live with her. I don't cook, I told friends, laughing, so my mom's worried about my diet. She's glad I'm coming back. I think my father would be surprised, and proud, to see how close we've grown. His house, his business, the inheritance he left behind. I'll protect them, but more importantly, I'll protect us. I'll protect the family we've become. Together, my mother and I began visiting the graves of both my father and my biological mother, her sister, to share news about our lives. And eventually, we took the final step. I was formally adopted, legally registered as her daughter, a mother and daughter, not by blood, but by bond. We're not the family we started as. But we are the family we chose. I want you to give her monthly allowances, my father instructed before he passed. If she gets a lump sum, she'll burn through it in no time, and if she complains, don't give her a single yen. Though his final words were laced with humor, his intentions were serious. He also handed me an SD card, a video message addressed to my mother. At the time, I didn't think I'd ever need to show it to her, but as things unfolded, it became clear that moment might come sooner than I thought. After I left home, I expected my mother to contact me eventually. What I didn't expect was how quickly that call came. Come home, now, she barked over the phone. I'm at work, can't this wait? I asked, irritation flickering in my chest. I need to talk to you, immediately. Sighing, I grabbed the SD card and returned to the house I no longer considered home. As soon as I stepped inside, she attacked with accusations. You took everything, didn't you? The inheritance. You left so fast. I knew something wasn't right. Hand it over, now. I stared at her, stunned by her audacity. How can you be this selfish? You've never even acted like a mother. Without another word, I held out the SD card. She frowned, confused. What's this? Something you probably don't even know how to play, I muttered, unable to mask my disappointment. I set up my laptop, inserted the card, and queued up the video. There he was, my father, full of life, smiling on the screen. I watched my mother's face as his image appeared, then quietly stepped out of the room, leaving her alone with his final message. I wondered whether his words would reach her now, when he was no longer here to speak them aloud. When I returned, she was crying. Tears streamed down her face, something I had never seen before. My mother, moved to tears by my father's video? I wasn't sure what to think. I hadn't watched the message myself, so I could only guess what had been said. Are you okay? I asked hesitantly. She nodded. Yes, I'll be fine. I understand now. I'll respect your father's wishes. You handle things from here. Just go home for today. Call me when you've had time to process everything. Something had shifted in her. She seemed fragile, reflective. I left without pushing further, still wondering how my father had managed to silence her from beyond the grave. Weeks passed. I heard nothing from her, no calls, no visits. Eventually, worry overtook me, and during a lunch break, I returned to the house. She wasn't home. That evening, I stopped by again. This time, the lights were on. I came by earlier. You weren't here. I was worried, I said when she opened the door. Sorry, I was out at my part-time job, she said. I blinked. A part-time job? You? The woman I had known all my life detested the idea of work, and now she had a job? You didn't watch the video? I asked, baffled by this transformation. I did, she replied, but it was addressed to you, too. You should see it. May I? She nodded and handed the SD card back to me. Later that night, I sat at my father's desk in the office and inserted the card. My heart beat faster as the screen lit up and his voice filled the room. Honey, if you're watching this, it means I'm no longer able to speak to you myself. First, thank you for helping raise Amy. Without you, I couldn't have managed both the company and our home. His words were tender, filled with sincerity, but they soon took a turn I never expected. You've looked after Amy, even though she's not your child, and I can never thank you enough for that. The world seemed to tilt. Not her child? My mind raced, trying to make sense of the words. You stood by my side for so many years. You gave up your dreams. You reached this point in life without ever earning your own living, and that's on me. I allowed you to live in comfort but never gave you independence. I regret that. I regret stealing time from you. I sat frozen. I'm not her child? I struggled to reconcile the revelation with everything I thought I knew. My childhood, our cold relationship, the distance I had felt all made a strange sort of sense now. He continued, voice calm but heavy with regret. I never married you because you said you felt guilty for your sister, and so, I supported you quietly, but now, I fear for your future. When I'm gone, there's no one left to look after you. I'm sorry. The video ended. Silence surrounded me, but inside, I was reeling. The next day, I confronted her. I watched the video. I said, you know, don't you? She met my gaze, weary but composed. I raised you because he asked me to, that's all. Her words were blunt, not cruel, but heavy with something I couldn't name. I swallowed hard. What happened to my real mother? Thank you for your support on Echoes and Tales. Now begin this one. My name is Amy Snyder, and I'm 27 years old. I still live with my parents, a close-knit trio that stayed together since my childhood. Growing up, my admiration for my father knew no bounds. He was the embodiment of dedication, running a successful, demanding business. His work kept him away much of the time, but when he was home, he made every moment count. No matter how exhausted he was, he prioritized me. He wasn't just present, he was invested. A remarkable father by every measure. My mother, however, was a stark contrast. For as long as I can remember, she never worked. She handled domestic tasks, but played no part in my father's business, nor did she build a career of her own. We lived comfortably, and she seemed content filling her days with social events and idle chatter. Yet despite her physical presence, Her emotional absence left a quiet void in my life. There were times I felt deeply alone, but my father's unwavering love always filled that emptiness. He saw the disconnect between my mother and me and went out of his way to compensate for it. As I matured, I began to see my mother more clearly. She often made promises she never kept, while my father's word was as solid as stone. I learned early not to place too much faith in her assurances, and in contrast, my respect for my father only grew. I even dreamed of working with him. As his only child, I wanted to carry on what he'd built. When I entered my 20s, our occasional outings turned into quiet lessons, where he shared insights from years of running his company. Meanwhile, my mother remained a distant observer in my life, her involvement minimal at best. The only time she voiced a strong opinion was during my sophomore year of college, when I told them both I wanted to work for my dad after graduation. "Dad, I want to join your company. I've already started preparing. I want to follow in your footsteps," I said, brimming with enthusiasm. My mother interrupted, her voice laced with dismissive certainty. "Amy, are you sure about that? A girl doesn't need to bother with such things." "Why not?" I asked, surprised. "I want to work hard, like Dad." "A woman should marry well and let her husband take care of her," she said, clinging to outdated ideals. Her words stung. I didn't argue. I simply decided I would never live her life. I refused to be defined by someone else's expectations. I wanted to stand on my own and build a life that meant something to me. From that point on, I threw myself into my studies, focused and determined to earn my place in my father's company. While my mother stayed unconvinced, she eventually gave up trying to dissuade me. "If this is what you've chosen, so be it," she said flatly, "but don't say I didn't warn you when the consequences come." And so, I stepped into my father's world, a decision that only widened the emotional gap between my mother and me. At the same time, my bond with my father deepened. He personally mentored me, spending countless hours training me. Even though I didn't realize at the time it was driven by something more than succession planning, it was his deteriorating health. Over the course of 6 months, he passed on everything he could. Then, one day at work, he collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital, the beginning of a 5-year battle with illness. During that time, I took over much of the business, while he made occasional appearances, pushing through his weakening condition. "How's the company doing without your father?" my mother once asked, her concern barely masking her doubt. "It's hard, but everyone's been supportive. Dad prepared me well," I replied. "Well, just don't let the company fall apart under your care," she warned, not with concern, but criticism. "You've never cared about this company," I said quietly, "you just care what people will say." The tension between us became unbearable. While I juggled long workdays and hospital visits, my mother only did the bare minimum, occasionally bringing clothes or small necessities to my father. Even that seemed like a chore to her. I often wondered if she felt anything at all for the man who had worked himself to the bone for our family. I made it a point to be by his side as often as I could. I owed him that, for the love he gave me when I needed it most. For about a year, that became my routine. Then, one morning, he passed peacefully in his sleep. In the chaotic days that followed, I barely had time to mourn. My mother left all the responsibilities to me, funeral arrangements, paperwork, everything. I wasn't surprised. She had always remained within her own bubble, untouched by the world outside our home. I knew I couldn't count on her, so I didn't even try. The day after the funeral, she confronted me. "Amy, now that it's all done, you're settled, right?" she asked, almost too casually. I stared at her in silence. "You can leave now," she continued. "I've just inherited 200 million yen, so I don't need you anymore, thank you." Her dismissal wasn't even cruel, it was coldly procedural, but I had braced for it. I said nothing. What was the point? Did she really believe money could replace love, or erase years of indifference? The next day, I quietly sold or transferred anything tied to me. She was stunned by how quickly I left, but what she didn't know was this. The 200 million yen she spoke of, it never existed for her. Before he died, my father had placed all financial matters in my hands. Every yen, every asset, was entrusted to me. Not a single cent was left to her. It was his final decision. "She doesn't understand money," he once said. "She never has."